Joining me in the AOPA Live studio is Randy Babbitt, former FAA Administrator. Randy, welcome. Thanks for joining us here at AOPA.
Well, thank you very much.
It's great to have you. Just recently, you sort of moved beyond what had been a difficult point in your life,
right.
When you were arrested for a DUI, and then recently exonerated for that. But in the process, you lost your job at the FAA. You resigned as administrator. So tell me about what you're thinking about that process now.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me here. It's great to be here, and looking forward to it. Yeah, it was a very difficult time. You know, when this whole event started, if I had been just an ordinary citizen, this would have been nothing. But I wasn't. And it does show you that the press in Washington, D.C. and in politics becomes a blood sport very quickly.
It does.
And so with all of the negative attention that was being put on me and over the situation, guilt was not the issue. It was the focus of all this distraction. And it just wasn't right to do that to the people who work at the FAA. And so I felt the best course was just to simply resign.
Right.
And I'm very happy to have it behind me now, and you know, once, and I'm sure a number of people have seen the videotape, I clearly didn't do anything but make a left turn. I think the judge agreed with that pretty quickly.
Right.
And I was very pleased, not only was I exonerated of all the charges, the judge is going to expunge the record, so that's a good thing. But I'm glad it's over with.
Yeah, well, good for you.
Yeah.
Speaking of politics, it is everywhere, particularly this year as we're in a presidential election year.
Right.
And Michael Huerta was brought on, or came in as the administrator, the interim administrator. How likely do you think it is that we're going to end up with a full-time appointment to that 5-year position before the election, before the inauguration, really?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I mean, Michael's a terrific person. Michael was my deputy, and I worked very closely with Michael. He's very competent, and he would do a terrific job. However, I think go back behind the curtain, and either party, thinking they might gain control of the White House, would be reluctant to take an action that would put somebody in an acting position for 5 years when there's an election less than 6 months away. So I think, you know, we'll see how the politics plays out. If history is a lesson, there won't be anything before the election. But, you know, people sometimes, the subcommittees often can work together on some of these things, and it would certainly serve the agency well to have someone who you know is going to be there for the period.
Yeah. You were working on a lot of important projects when you were administrator, and Next Gen among them. How do you think those projects are going? What are your thoughts now from the outside looking in about the progress being made around some of those big projects?
Sure. Well, I think Next Gen is a big challenge. I mean, the Next Gen is a sort of a three-legged stool, if you will, and the first leg of that is making sure that you've got the infrastructure in place, and I think we're well along to having the infrastructure in place. All those 800 plus antennas around. The Gulf is in operation with 250,000 miles every day, and I'm sure your members, which I'm one of, read weekly the new cities that now have broadcasts that you can get weather and all your NOTAMs and the various things that are helpful for pilots. So those are all underway. We still have to equip all the airplanes, and you know, that's got a deadline on it, but early equipage would certainly accelerate this and accelerate the benefits that come from Next Gen, especially in the complex metropolitan areas. Thirdly, you've got to design approaches and procedures, and you can't just have overlays. I mean, there's no point in putting a GPS approach, an LVP approach into an airport that already has an ILS. I mean, that doesn't, it's nice, but it's not additive to the process. What my goal was to, and I think we're working toward it, would be to take and skip that step. Let's go to a lot of airports that couldn't really afford necessarily when they do the cost benefit. We couldn't afford to put millions of dollars in terms of planning and the equipment, the maintenance of the equipment, to put an ILS or a precision type of approach into a moderately served airport. You've got to have a lot of traffic to command that. But all we have to do is design the approach for ADS-B or GPS type approaches. ADS-B can track them, GPS can shoot them, giving lots of people vertical and horizontal guidance to airports all over the country that we'd never otherwise get to. So I think that's a big step for us. But it's underway, and I think I've certainly said it enough times. I think Michael echoes the same thing. People spend billions of dollars finding products that make airplanes more efficient. If the country would simply spend billions of dollars, we can make every airplane in the country more efficient. Jim Albaugh, Boeing, has a quote along those lines, and I paraphrase and credit him often for that. But we'll get there. I just wish sometimes it would move a little more quickly. I wish people would see the benefit side.
One of the big initiatives that AOPA and EAA collectively are working toward is petitioning the FAA for an exemption for certain types of flight operations that you wouldn't have to have a third-class medical certificate for that. How likely is it? What do you think the FAA's appetite is for accepting something like that?
Well, I think it's a good atmosphere right now and a good appetite. I think we've had some good experience with the light sport aircraft and the certification with the driver's license. People holding people accountable for their own medical conditions. We do that anyway, to some degree.
Sure.
You can take a physical and 2 weeks later have something happen. You're the responsible party. And so, and I think as we move forward, I think there's a lot of interest in broadening the base of people who can fly, who are permitted to fly. And part of that is removing some of the barriers, whether it's the cost of building the airplanes, whether it's the cost of getting your ratings and all these different things that I think a lot of us in the industry are concerned are barriers that where are we going to get this next generation if it's so expensive and so difficult.
Right. On a related note, speaking of cost of aircraft, a Part 23 rewriting the regulations required to certify a Part 23 airplane, that's being worked on as well. How likely do you think it is that we're going to see any significant change in what it takes to certify an airplane?
Well, I'm hopeful, very optimistic that we'll see some progress there. I know we've had a lot of interface with the industry. The industry has provided through a number of vehicles, including AOPA, and you've got good colleagues with Gamma and other agency or trade groups that are working on these things. And I think they've made a really good case. And more important, we've got a good history, a good backdrop with the light sport aircraft I mentioned earlier. Those aircraft are built literally with self-regulation. They take the responsibility for building the airplane and maintaining standards that they have set. And they're very stringent. And that's a good thing. I think the budget atmosphere that we have right now in the country and in general, in the FAA in particular, says that, look, we're going to have to do more with less. And let's make sure that these rules we have are efficient. Let's make sure they're getting the job done that we want. We want safe airplanes. Everybody wants them. The people that are flying in them, the people that are building them and selling them, it's all the same goal. So let's find the most efficient way to do it. And if that includes some ability for self-regulation and more clear or simplified regulations, we should support that. And I think that's a good thing.
Some have said that the FAA was once the leader in the world from aviation safety and regulatory policy and that sort of thing. And there is the belief by some that the FAA has sort of lost that initiative and focus, and that Europe and EASA are overtaking that and in some cases forcing regulations back on the United States. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I would pretty strongly disagree. When anybody, when they can hold their safety record up against ours, tell them to come on over. Because right now, nobody, no one matches the safety record that we have in this country. We run the safest, it's an incredible system, really. And the more you know about it, the more impressive it gets. There's a lot of the fact that people generate regulations, and of course through ICAO, that's an interesting, and that's where these regulations come about, so that when someone says, well, we're being forced to do this by Europe, we have all agreed that we will abide by mutually acceptable rules. And so when someone takes it to ICAO, there's no sense in two of us taking the same regulation to ICAO. So if someone's already got a head start, you take it and then we'll match it, and vice versa. And believe me, we bring plenty. The very issue we're talking about, sometimes I think we bring too many. But no, our research capabilities, our oversight capabilities. It's a marvelous industry, and I think we still, everywhere when I would travel to other countries, people would literally tell you that anytime they wanted to make a change, the first call they make is to the United States FAA. How do you do it? You know, we want to do it like you do it. So we're still the gold standard.
Yeah. So what's next for Randy Babbitt? You doing any flying, and where do you go from here from a career standpoint?
Yeah, no, I'm doing a lot of flying. I just had a wonderful evening the other night. I had dinner with, speaking of flying, with Bob Hoover, who is 90 and sharp as ever, and funny as ever. No, but I keep my hand in light aircraft. I've gotten all my certifications back, including my tail wheel. And,
good for you.
Yep, a friend of mine's got a Bonanza. I've spent some time in. We flew it back.
Nice airplane.
Beautiful airplane. Yeah, flew it all the way from Fredericksburg, Texas, down through San Antonio, Pensacola, and went to Fun and Sun in it. So
good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And got a little time in a 170 down at Fun and Sun, which was great. I used to own a 170, so that was a lot of fun. Work-wise, I'm doing some work in the airline industry again. I had a small company, and I sold it to a larger company, and went with that company. Stepped down from them when I went to the FAA. They would like me to come back. I told them I'm gonna take a little sabbatical first and do a couple. I've got some friends at a carrier out in Texas that I'm working with, and but yeah, toward the end of the year I'll give some thought to that. But I want to keep my options open so I can keep flying light aircraft and general aviation. You get away from it, and you forget how much fun it is.
It is. It is. Well, Randy, thanks so much for joining us on AOPA Live. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. It's good to be back. Thank you.